Japan may be a fairly remote country in geographical terms, even to the more experienced Western traveller. However, it has always worked extremely hard to make its presence known around the world, and no other place in this cluster of islands has shouted louder across the seas than its capital city and our destination today, Tokyo. Like so many other capitals, Tokyo had extremely humble beginnings. However, it's worked tirelessly over the centuries to become one of the most important cities in the world. Once, this was just a small fishing village called Edo on the banks of the river Sumida. But as time passed and each ruling leader added more to the settlement, it started to grow at a phenomenal rate. By the 19th century, it had been renamed Tokyo and was supporting over 1 million residents. By now, it had also become home to the country's governmental and economical bases, making it the de facto capital of Japan, and since then, it has literally exploded in size and wealth. The city is vast, and although central Tokyo has about 12 million residents, surrounding towns and cities have been swallowed to create a sprawling metropolis of over 33 million. This makes Tokyo the most heavily populated city in the world, and it's no surprise that its streets are always full, its economy is still growing, and its boundaries still expanding. There's so much more to Tokyo, though, than first meets the eye. It's not just about a huge population, rich economy, and tacky neon signs. Tokyo has a deep and intriguing past, and you only have to scratch the surface to bring a rich and extraordinary history to light. From wealthy business districts and towering skyscrapers to Buddhist shrines and ancient parks, Tokyo has embraced all aspects of life, and you'll find it hard to be bored here. If the bright lights ever become too much, you only need to turn the corner and Tokyo will reinvent itself before your very eyes. As you begin this fascinating adventure, the best advice is to expect the unexpected. Tokyo is a city full of surprises, and no matter what you thought of it before, by the time the hour is up, you'll have painted a very different picture of this extraordinary capital. As Tokyo is one of the world's most densely populated cities, it's best to start our tour in an area that gradually leads you into this metropolis. With its huge population and sprawling size, Tokyo really can be a daunting city. However, if you take one step at a time and acclimatise yourself slowly to the Japanese pace of life, you'll discover why it truly is one of the world's most incredible destinations. Let's head first of all to Ueno Park, and the perfect spot to ease yourself into your tour around the capital. Ueno Park has been a favourite open space with both tourists and locals ever since it was made a public park in 1873. Famous for its cherry blossom in springtime, year upon year attractions are added to this lovely space to tempt people away from the bustling streets of Tokyo and into the more serene atmosphere of the park. As you wander along the many paths and begin to explore these beautiful surroundings, you may be surprised to discover that things haven't always been quite so peaceful within the park's walls. Ueno Hill, as it was once known, is the very spot where the last great battle of Japan was fought in 1868, marking the end of nearly 700 years of rule under the ancient Japanese system of government, the shogunate. Although 2,000 loyalists tried to defend the last of the feudal regimes, the Tokugawa shogunate, from the imposing imperial army, their efforts were in vain, and imperial rule was swiftly reinstated and the loyalists and their temples destroyed. Keen to wash away the remnants of the past, new Imperial Japan opened the country up to world trade, and so began a period of great transformation and growth within the city. The park you see before you today is evidence of the great changes that have taken place, and because of the power that once resided here, Ueno has become an enduring symbol of how Tokyo has had to reinvent itself in order to expand and prosper. One of the city's most famous landmarks actually stands within the boundaries of the park, and over the years has become not only a symbol of New Tokyo, but also of Ueno Park itself. This enchanting statue of the samurai Saigo Takamori was erected in 1898 and has since become one of the capital's most cherished residents. Saigo Takamori was one of the people credited with helping to restore the emperor's power after the Tokugawa shogunate was overthrown, and his statue symbolises the strength of the nation and the proud nationalism of its people. Because of what the samurai soldier stands for, the Americans demanded it should be removed after the Second World War, in an attempt to quash the pride of the Japanese and their empire. But despite their defeat, Japan refused to surrender this much revered homage to a true Japanese hero. And because of this, you can still stand in the glory of Saigo Takamori and his dog to this very day. If Saigo Takamori could step down from his plinth and wander around the park, then he'd be extremely impressed with what the Japanese have done with the space. In fact, they've added so much to the park that if you really wanted to, you could easily spend a whole holiday here, as there's just so much to do. One aspect of the park that's very different from parks around the world is that it offers a host of fantastic museums, which are just crying out to be explored. The largest and most important of these has to be the Tokyo National Museum, and there's no missing its imposing facade as you wander around the park. With its gracefully slanting roof and open front, it's extremely iconic of classic Eastern architecture and is a beautiful sight when you first stumble upon it. If you venture through the front doors, the interior is just as stunning, and its huge collection of nearly 90,000 artifacts gives the visitor a great insight into Japanese history. If you haven't got the time to explore the many rooms, then you can get just as good a sense of history by wandering around the outside of the building and taking in its magnificent design, or enjoying the tranquil fountains and gardens that grace the main entrance. As if this wasn't enough, Ueno Park is also home to two more world-class museums, the National Science Museum and the fabulous National Museum of Modern Art. This modernist building has been here since 1959, And although it may not be to everybody's taste, it does go to show how the people of Tokyo are prepared to take risks in terms of architecture and design. When many people think of Japan, pictures of pagodas and silk kimonos instantly come to mind. However, this building and many others you'll see throughout the tour prove that Tokyo has much more to offer than just these traditional images. Of course, that is not to say that Tokyo has done away with the more typical Japanese buildings, far from it. And even within Ueno Park, you can discover some fine examples of a more ancient Tokyo. One of the most awe-inspiring is the Toshogu Shrine, which you can find if you walk to the western end of the park. It's pretty hard to put into words the magnificence of this shrine, built for the old Tokugawa shogunate, and it really is best to let the images do the talking for you. The ornate complex of halls and detailed architectural design creates a truly exquisite sight. And as you can see, it really is one of the most perfect examples of traditional Japanese architecture. Now a designated national treasure, the Toshogu Shrine is decorated with the most beautiful carvings both inside and out. And gazing up at these enchanting structures will give you a taste of the splendour of 17th century Japan, which cannot fail to captivate visitors from every corner of the world. If you have the time to continue roaming amongst the cherry trees and numerous plants, it's possible to discover many other sights and attractions within the park. From traditional Japanese pagodas to the city zoo, Ueno really does cater for all manner of people, and this is why it's become such a popular spot in Tokyo today. But sadly, it's time to move on, as you haven't even scratched the surface of this fascinating city yet, and there's so much more to see. After a gentle introduction to the capital, you should now be ready to delve deeper into the city centre, and the best way to get around is usually by the extremely efficient subway system. From Ueno Park, it's just a short trip south to Tokyo's central subway stop, Otemachi. And from here, a 10-minute walk will take you to your next location, the stunning Imperial Palace Gardens. From what you've seen so far, you could be excused for thinking that Tokyo is hardly the buzzing metropolis filled with towering buildings and neon lights you expected. But you'll have a chance to see modern Tokyo in due course. For the time being, a visit to the Imperial Palace Gardens will give you the opportunity to enjoy yet another example of the greener and calmer side of the city, and you'll struggle to find anywhere more tranquil and beautiful than this amongst the sights of the capital. Ueno Park may have been filled with attractions and museums, but for a true taste of majestic Japan, this is the best place you could possibly be. The gardens also house the Imperial Palace, where Japan's emperor resides, and as this is effectively his back garden, you can understand why it's kept so immaculately. Even though much of the gardens are sadly not open to the public, it's still possible to wander through some parts of the area and even catch a glimpse of the magnificent palace itself. Although the land on which the palace has been built was first used to build Edo Castle for the Tokugawa shogun back in the 16th century, and the emperor's abode may well look as though it's been standing here for hundreds of years, you'll be surprised to find that the structure you can see today has only been here since 1968. During the Second World War, a great deal of Tokyo was destroyed in wave after wave of bombing, and as a result, many of her historical buildings were left in ruins. Sadly, the 19th century palace, built near the ancient Shogun castle, no longer exists, but you'll find the replacement is just as enchanting. Of course, as you would expect, the palace is out of bounds to the humble tourist, so you'll have to make do with gazing in from afar and imagining what it must have been like to live in such luxury. One of the most memorable spots to enjoy the regal atmosphere is along one of the elegant bridges that reach effortlessly across from the eastern gardens to the central palace grounds. And one of the finest within this complex has to be the Nijubashi Bridge, which leads right up to the palace gates. This stone bridge has provided a crossing to the imperial home since 1888 and was fortunate enough to survive the bombings which destroyed the palace. To this day, its arches look as strong as they must have done well over 100 years ago. And pausing on this spot above the tranquil waters of the moat, surrounded by the many trees and wonderful buildings, will let you soak in one of the most unforgettable locations in all of Tokyo, and you'll no doubt cherish its memory for years to come. There are, of course, many other equally stunning areas within the confines of the Imperial Palace. And if you want to find a quiet spot to escape the clamour of the city, then there really is no better place to be. However, as you have yet to really experience the famous energy of central Tokyo, it's probably time you took a breath and with one last look at the tranquil views, dive into the very heart of the metropolis. Just as the Nijubashi Bridge provides the best spot to gaze at the emperor's official residence, the waterways of Tokyo offer one of the finest methods of transporting the adventuring visitor into the core of the city. The Sumida River flows through much of central Tokyo, and for just a few hundred yen, you can enjoy a voyage on one of the many riverboats that travel up and down it. The trip along the river is a stunning way to see not only some of the more impressive buildings that dominate the skyline, but will also give you another chance to explore Tokyo's past. Back when the city was only a small fishing town, the Sumida River was used to transport vital catches from the bay to many destinations further inland. The inhabitants were all too aware of the importance of the river and its tributaries to their survival, and called the settlement Edo, which means estuary. And indeed, without its waterways reaching far into the mainland, Tokyo may not have grown into the thriving city it's become today. Now, of course, you're more likely to see queues of tour ships occupying the water than fishing boats. But it doesn't take too much imagination to think of what it must have been like all those years ago, when this used to be the lifeline of the population. One of the best spots to start your tour is near the Hamarikyu Gardens, which is rooted in Tokyo's feudal past. And this is somewhere you'll get a chance to explore in more detail later on. As you take a gentle trip along the estuary, passing through various parts of the older city, you'll find you move through different eras in the blink of an eye, and all of a sudden, as Tokyo's more traditional sites disappear, the magnificent modern skyline finally opens up in a burst of shapes and sizes. As you can see, the views are as iconic as those of any other great city around the world, and truly are a sight to behold. With its towering skyscrapers and unique buildings, Tokyo has taken city design to a whole new level, and must rank alongside the great cities of New York, Dubai and Los Angeles when it comes to arresting cityscapes. Tokyo has been at the forefront of technological and architectural development for many years, and as you meander slowly along the Sumida, this point is illustrated perfectly by the sights you can see. From the green roof of the famous Ryogoku Sumo Stadium to the unusual and striking Asahi Beer building, the Sumida really does offer some of the finest vantage points around the city. However, another great thing about this trip is that not only does it give you the opportunity to see famous sites such as the Edo Tokyo Museum and the Tsukiji Fish Market, but it also is a brilliant way to catch a glimpse of local life along the banks of the river. From the many rows of white rice warehouses buzzing with countless workers to the hundreds of apartment blocks, a colourful picture is created of what it must be like to live in the heart of this bustling city. It's warming to see how the locals still live so close to the centre of Tokyo, and this is probably another reason why it has such a vibrant energy that really can't be found in any other destination around the world. With the riverbanks so densely populated, it's no surprise that a great number of bridges span the Sumida, with a total of 13 just along this small central strip. From the huge expanse covered by the Rainbow Suspension Bridge in Tokyo Bay, to the iconic Kachidoki Bridge with its grey metal arches, each structure seems to differ in some way from the next, and they really are worth looking out for. Enjoying such a stunning variety of architectural sites is surely the perfect way to summarise your trip through Tokyo so far, as on every corner, something new and memorable is revealed. And as you delve even deeper into the capital's delights, you won't be disappointed, as yet more unique sights and sounds are just waiting to be discovered. The next stop is filled with the clamour of a thriving city, and to say that Tsukiji Market is huge would be an understatement. This is the world's largest and busiest fish market, and a great place to experience the famous frenzied energy of Tokyo. The best time to visit is in the early hours of the morning, when the market is teeming with activity. But of course, if you aren't keen on a 5 a.m. start, you'll be relieved to know that throughout the day you'll still find a vast number of people rushing about, and it's always an intriguing place to be. In fact, Tsukiji Market has been a great place to visit for many years, and although it was relocated to this spot after the devastating earthquake of 1923, it actually dates back to the 17th century. Hundreds of years ago, the first Tokugawa shogun invited fishermen from Osaka, tempting them with special fishing privileges, so the residents of Edo Castle could have an abundant supply of fresh seafood. Of course, since then, the market has grown enormously, and as you can see, there's more than enough fish here to feed a royal household. Over 2 million metric tons of fresh fish are passed through the market every single day, which brings in excess of over 600 billion yen's worth of fish per year. You may work up a bit of an appetite as you explore the market, and if that's the case, you're in the perfect place to sample some of Japan's freshest catches, as the surrounding area is filled with wonderful fish restaurants, guaranteed to give you a delicious taste of Eastern cuisine. If you'd like to take a break in a spot that's a little less frantic while you're in this part of the city, it's worth heading to the Hamarikyu Gardens, which were mentioned a little earlier. Otherwise known as the Hama Detached Beauty after just one glance. Originally landscaped for one of Japan's feudal leaders in the 17th century, these grounds have been open to the public since 1946, and they really should visit to the capital. Even though you're only a stone's throw from the Tsukiji Market, standing in this lovely oasis gives the impression you're a million miles away. The atmosphere couldn't be any further from the din of shouting traders, machinery and clattering fish carts, and instead your senses are calmed by the trickle of water, the smell of exotic plants, and an overwhelming sense of peace. This is a wonderful place to take an afternoon stroll, where you can admire the many species of trees, or even enjoy some traditional entertainment. While relaxing in this wonderful spot, this is also the perfect opportunity to experience some of Japan's soothing green teas to really revive the spirits. At the centre of the gardens, one of Tokyo's most beautiful tea houses sits amidst the water of a small lake, and here you can find a selection of teas so fine that even emperors and presidents have paused to drink here. Of course, there are tea houses all over the city, and if you want to take the weight off your feet for a few moments, these are great places to rest and unwind with a traditional Asian drink. Although walking along the tranquil paths of the gardens can make you forget you're in the heart of one of the busiest capitals in the world, you'll find it hard to ignore the tall buildings standing on its outskirts. And once you've fully recharged your batteries, it's time to head north towards those giant structures and into the dizzying rush of Ginza. This famous district is surely one of the most representative of the entire city, and will probably seem instantly familiar to you. With its busy streets, neon signs, designer stores and tall skyscrapers, Ginza greets you with many of the images you would expect to see in Japan's modern capital. Although this area may seem a little daunting at first, especially after enjoying the tranquility of the Hamarikyu Gardens, once you immerse yourself in the excitement, you'll be won over by its charms. The best place to start is at the crossroads of the Ginza Yonchome crossing. If you want to see one of Tokyo's most symbolic locations, they don't get much more iconic than this. Filmed, photographed, painted and written about, these pedestrian crossings really have become part of modern-day pop culture, and the fast-paced, hectic atmosphere of the comings and goings of thousands of people that use them every day really does sum up New Tokyo perfectly. The crossings also provide a great location to watch the throngs of people descending on the shopping and entertainment area. You'll find the extreme variety of individuals here absolutely fascinating. In amongst Tokyo residents rushing to the shops, you'll see fashionable teenagers on the lookout for the latest trends, high-flying businessmen taking their clients out for lunch. There'll often be tourists pausing to have their picture taken on the famous white stripes. As you watch the crowds go by, you may also catch the occasional glimpse of locals wearing face masks. But don't be too alarmed, as this is quite normal for Japan, and from worries about air quality to fears of spreading the common cold, the city's residents will often be found taking this perhaps unusual precaution. Tokyo caters for a huge variety of people, and there's something in Ginza for everyone. In fact, the area attracts such a mix of visitors that the wonderful patchwork of social types bustling through have become almost as interesting to look at as the buildings themselves. Of course, that's not to say that Ginza doesn't have its fair share of memorable buildings and sites to visit, as you only have to look around to see some fabulous structures. For example, take a look at the striking cylindrical Sanai building that sits overlooking the Yonchome crossing, Its bright lights and flashing billboards signal that you're now far from the older and more traditional Tokyo, and at night when the coloured lights fill the sky, it truly is a marvellous sight. As you can see, the buildings and people in Ginza make this area the heart of stylish Tokyo. However, this isn't a recent phenomenon, as the district has been popular for many years, dating as far back as the 1800s. Much of Tokyo was still built out of wood at this time, and when the area was devastated by fire, the Emperor Meiji decided it would be the first part of Tokyo to be constructed out of the more durable red brick. It was hoped that this would ensure the buildings would survive the fires and earthquakes that had affected the city in the past and would set a trend for the rest of Tokyo. However, this was not to be the success the emperor had hoped. In 1923, the Great Kanto earthquake totally devastated the capital and surrounding towns, and the red brick buildings of Ginza crumbled and fell. By this time, though, the area had become so popular that it was rebuilt, and as you can see, improvement upon improvement has been added ever since. Because of this, no matter how many times you come back to visit, you'll always see something new, and the electrifying energy of its streets and buildings will leave an unforgettable imprint on your memory. Before leaving the dazzling lights of Ginza, there's one more site that really should be visited. On a corner of the Yeoncheom crossing sits a structure that really looks like it shouldn't be here at all. In fact, the Waco department store looks as though it's been plucked from neo-Renaissance London to grace the streets of modern Tokyo. The reason it stands out so much compared to everything else is that this building was actually constructed in 1936. It is one of the only structures in Ginza to be left standing after the Second World War bombings. Although it differs so much in style to every other building that you've seen in the district so far, it also manages to complement everything around it. From its decorative clock, perched up on top, to its brilliant white brickwork, it's easy to see why this department store has become such a cherished Tokyo building, and really is the crowning glory of the area. If you've got an hour to spare, it really is worth stepping inside, as the quality of the goods on offer are second to none. But as you'll have plenty of opportunity to enjoy the shops and a whole host of other attractions in the next location, it's now time to move on. Jumping back on the metro to head west will take you to the shopping and business mecca of Shinjuku. But before wandering around the labyrinth of restaurants, stores and skyscrapers, it's worth taking the time to spend a few moments in the district train station. Shinjuku Station is one of the busiest in the world, and you'll see literally thousands of people rushing in and out. In fact, on average, over 3 million people use Shinjuku Station every day. And if you have the misfortune to catch a train here during rush hour, be prepared for quite a squeeze when you get on the carriages. Just like Ginza Yeoncheom crossing, the huge number of people make this an excellent place to watch the world go by. And as you see locals rushing about their business, you get a great impression of the hard-working atmosphere of Tokyo, which has made the capital what it is today. When the station first opened in 1885, it was a very different place, as this was long before Shinjuku had become the crammed business and shopping district it is today. Back then, only a handful of people ever used the trains. Over the years, as services doubled and trebled, lines were added, and then suddenly, as Tokyo began to grow, so did the number of commuters. The one line has now increased to over 10, and the number of exits has shot through the roof from just a handful to over 200. The amount of commuters using the station may seem a little dizzying, but when you wander around the vast area of Shinjuku, it's easy to see why so many people have to come here every single day. Everyone descends on Shinjuku for a different reason, and taking a left or right turn when you leave the station will lead you to two very contrasting districts. To the west, Tokyo's most impressive skyscrapers loom above bustling business districts. Whereas to the east, you'll find plenty of shops and entertainment. Both areas are worth a visit, but if you've still got the energy after the excitement of Ginza, why not first explore the buzzing nightlife of eastern Shinjuku? The best way to venture through this area is by simply wandering around with no real directional plan. There's so much here for the senses to take in that it's great just to meander along the streets and see what you encounter by chance. Ginza may have been filled with exclusive shops and department stores, but Shinjuku is the play area of Tokyo and has been a nightlife centre to the capital from back in the days when the city was still known as Edo. Entertainments are particularly aimed at tired commuters travelling back to the suburbs from the city centre, and by night you'll find the area illuminated with the bright lights of noodle bars, restaurants and cinemas, and even hostess bars. But you'll also see plenty of clubs and music venues, and without doubt this is the place to head to at the end of a hard-working week. One of the first sights that most people encounter after stepping out of the station is the famous Studio Alta. With its bright lights and huge TV screen, this has become a great attraction in the area and a favourite meeting spot in Tokyo. Although to be fair, it's always so busy here, trying to find someone in the crowd is nearly impossible. You may find looking at Studio Alta and the surrounding area quite an assault on the senses, but you'll also find something quite alluring about this colourful district. This must be why Shinjuku has continued to grow and develop over the years. And with the size it is today, it really is very easy to get lost in the huge network of bustling streets. Of course, with so much to do and see, it doesn't really matter if you do find yourself engulfed on all sides with no way out, as East Shinjuku never sleeps. And even if you find yourself lost in the early hours of the morning, you'll discover that no matter what time of day or night, there'll always be something open here. On this occasion, you should be safe from the dangers of straying too far, and as time is pressing, the best option now is to head back towards the train station to begin exploring West Shinjuku. Although this is also heavily built up, the western part of the district couldn't be any more different from the eastern side. The chaotic atmosphere, bright lights and colourful crowds are gone, and a very different mood is apparent in the wide and more sombre streets. If you explore West Shinjuku at the end of the working day, in place of shoppers and locals enjoying a night out, you'll find vast numbers of what have become known as salarymen and office ladies pouring from the buildings and marching through the streets. Of course, if you visit in the middle of the day, you'll find the area a lot quieter. But whatever time you choose to explore the district, the unique atmosphere is just as interesting to experience as anything that East Shinjuku has to offer. In any other business quarter around the world, there wouldn't really be anything to write home about. You'd probably skip over such areas. But in Tokyo, as you can see, even the business world is an extraordinary experience. Originally, this area used to be a huge water-filled reservoir. Although, as you can see, things are far different now, and everywhere you look, there are colossal skyscrapers reaching high into the clouds. One of the most impressive of these surely has to be the one which goes by the name of the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building. Completed in 1990, the towers are an impressive 296 metres high, and this is currently the fourth highest building in all of Japan. It's not just the height that's impressive though. The design by top Japanese architect Tanga Kenzo has created something very distinct from the average skyscraper. Apparently, Kenzo took his influences from Notre Dame in Paris. And when you look at the Gothic-inspired towers and statue-filled plaza outside, you'll be surprised to find it's not so hard to make this comparison. The magnificent structure truly is one of Tokyo's top architectural delights and merits a few moments of anyone's time, especially after the staggering $1 billion that was spent building it. If you have a little longer in the area, then it's worth making your way to the top of the towers, because the views from above, as you can imagine, really will take your breath away. And if you're very lucky, on a clear day, you can even see Mount Fuji in the distance. Of course, while you're here, rather than gazing at sights far beyond the city's confines, there are a host of structures to be admired right before your very eyes. The fantastic buildings and working atmosphere of West Shinjuku will show you how hard the capital's residents have worked to build their magnificent capital, and to many this area is now considered the secondary heart of the city. Gazing up at the immense height of the towering structures that fill the streets may make you wonder how vulnerable they might be in the event of a quake. However, the Japanese have always been one step ahead in terms of technology. And many of the modern buildings you can see today are built with special defences and shock absorbers. This is sure to come as a relief, as it would be a travesty if such wonderful creations were ever lost. Achieving such heights with marvellous towers is not a new phenomenon to the country, however, only to be associated with modern Tokyo, as you'll find reaching for the sky has been a popular trait of Japanese architecture for many centuries. If you leave the futuristic buildings of Shinjuku for the Asakusa region of the capital, you'll find an extraordinary remnant of a more ancient Tokyo. It may only be more recently that buildings have been able to reach quite as high as they do today, but taking a look at this equally impressive 5-story pagoda will prove that this architectural prowess has been around for many centuries. Situated inside the historical Sensoji Temple near the banks of the Sumida, this pagoda is a marvel of design and engineering. Although what you can see today is a faithful reproduction of the original, which was built in 1973, many hundreds of years ago, Tokyo was filled with pagodas just like this one, and the design has changed very little over the centuries. The Japanese have a great tradition of building religious temples to house sacred relics and scriptures, and this particular pagoda, along with the rest of the Sensoji Temple, really is one of Tokyo's finest. The main entrance to the temple is through the impressive Kaminarimon Gate. Just like the pagoda, this was also rebuilt relatively recently, though some of the original structure still remains. Despite giving the impression it has welcomed worshippers to Sensoji Temple for hundreds of years, this replica gate has only been standing here since 1960. The original was sadly destroyed in the Second World War, but as this was such an important site, it was rebuilt as soon as funds allowed. As you can see, no expense was spared in the building of the Thunder Gate, as it's also known, and the workmanship that's gone into it is quite remarkable. From the oriental curved roof and giant lantern to the striking red and white paint, the gate truly is a stunning entrance to this temple. If you look on the left and right-hand side of the gate, you can also see the two gods that protect both the gate and the temple inside. To the left is the god of thunder, and on the right is the god of wind, and with their fearsome stares, their two guardians you certainly wouldn't want to aggravate. If you dare to venture past, you'll find yourself walking along a lane bursting with traditional wares and filled with shoppers and tourists jostling beneath the handmade cherry blossom. The corridor of stalls and shops that creates Nakamisi Dori is a fascinating place to be, and here you'll find a whole host of treasures, from confectionery and handmade crackers to crafts and souvenirs. However, this isn't a new addition to the temple grounds, as centuries ago, priests put souvenir stalls up here in exchange for the locals agreeing to keep the area clean. And today, the shopping lane has become as popular as ever. You may be distracted by the attractions of Nakamisi Dori, but passing beneath the Hozomon Gate and its treasure house will give you the chance to explore a whole host of other magnificent sights, including the main hall of the temple itself. Although damaged by war, the original temple dates all the way back to 628 AD, when two fishermen are said to have fished a small gold statue of the Buddhist goddess of mercy from the Sumida River. The village chief built a shrine to the statue, which then became the temple you can see before you today. And although this and many of the surrounding structures are fairly new, this doesn't at all detract from Sensoji Temple being one of the most memorable sights in Tokyo. The atmosphere around the area is so unique too, as not only is it filled with tourists bustling through the mists of incense, but even to this day, it's an important religious spot for the people of Tokyo, who come from all over Japan to pay their respects. Maybe more importantly than this, though, is the fact that it also symbolises rebirth for the people of the city, as a great deal of the temple had to be rebuilt after the war. And it has a special place in the hearts of the locals, who see it not only as a temple for the gods, but also a temple for peace in Japan. This stunning spot seems to be the perfect place to end our fascinating journey through the enchanting city of Tokyo. Sensoji Temple is a perfect metaphor for how the capital has revived its ancient heritage and found a wonderful balance between old and new. People of Tokyo are not ones to dwell on the past, but they've worked hard not to forget it. There are not many cities around the world that achieve this balance so well. You could say that Tokyo is a city of constant contradictions, combining peace with energy, space with overcrowding, business with pleasure, and old with new. It is one of the only capitals in the world that can honestly offer something for everyone. And from the urgent rhythms of its consumer culture to the wonderful calm of its greener havens, you'll find exploring this glittering metropolis a truly unforgettable experience.